Alright, so here we are with the final review. What is going to come next is me talking a little bit about Unit 1, Unit 2, and what we've covered in Unit 3, and sort of the topics that you want to make sure you feel really comfortable with. Of course, things that you should also be using to study are the reviews for both Unit 1 and 2, in addition, of course, to all the problems that we've worked on throughout each of the units. So make sure that you're spending a lot of time revisiting those portions. Also, any quizzes or tests would be good things to go over as well. The questions that are part of this review, you can think of them, as a good opportunity to test your skills after you've studied. So you can use it sort of as a practice test and something to kind of further push your understanding of each concept. Alright, so the first two units really are very similar because polynomial functions, quadratic functions are polynomials. In Unit 1, some of the key things that we worked on, just graphing quadratic functions by finding their key characteristics. Of course, make sure you're able to do that with vertex form and understand that as well. And using a graph of a function to understand situations and answer questions in context, so real-world situations. We talked about complex roots, where those arrive and what they mean. Solving systems of equations that involve a quadratic equation, and transformations, reflections, translations, things like this. In Unit 2, we looked at parent functions and key characteristics of those particular polynomial functions. We were able to then graph polynomial functions using their key characteristics. We then looked and spent a lot of time looking at the linear factors that come out of quadratic, cubic, quartic, and quintic functions, and spent a lot of time talking about the relationship between linear factors and the roots of a polynomial function. Definitely important to know the fundamental theorem of algebra, the factor theorem, and the remainder theorem. We use polynomial functions to analyze real-world situations. Average rate of change I would highlight here. Very important to know what average rate of change is and how to find it regardless of the type of function that you're given. We spent some time with polynomial identities and a polynomial identity that is definitely the most important of the ones that we looked at, the binomial theorem. So you should make sure you know how to do or how to utilize all of those concepts. In Unit 3, what we've done so far is defined rational expressions. You should definitely understand that. Domain of rational expressions. We've simplified rational expressions and added, subtracted, multiplied, and divided rational expressions. So all of those things you should be quite familiar with. One thing that I'll add that I didn't mention either Unit 1 or Unit 2, but that we did in both, is even and odd functions, and just being able to define what it means to be an even function and an odd function, both geometrically and algebraically. Alright, what comes next are some practice questions. So only after you feel comfortable with these topics should you go into those practice questions and use those to test where you're at.